We'll start. We'll let them in as they're
Okay.
coming in,
I
right?
just hit the record.
Is
Okay.
Anne Marie going to be here?
No.
Okay.
You had a conflict
Yeah.
last minute.
Well, that's Suzanne and I are hosting for her tonight.
And then I will leave you in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Or 20. I gotta attend my mom duties. Drive my kid to go get his car in Huntington Beach. So
Hey, at least he was responsible.
yeah. He's visiting from Vegas this week and working from home.
Oh,
So that's that.
yeah. Especially driving through Huntington Beach traffic.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're recording. Do we want to start, Kelvin?
Yeah.
It's
Sure,
all
yeah.
yours.
Oh, okay. So, how many of you remember who I am? I've spoken to before a number of times. And my heart goes out to all of you because this group exists because by definition, everybody has lost a child on the other side. Okay. So my name's Kelvin Chin, and I've been helping people, parents, and everybody, but in your case, parents, understand better, till I say this, understand better where your children are, what's going on, what they're doing, what their life choices are on the other side, and what your choices and life choices are on this side while we're living here, and what they will be when you biologically die. I say biologically because we don't really die, we continue on, and what your choices will be on the other side. And so that's in a nutshell what I'm doing with my life now. I used to be a lawyer, and I started my nonprofit about 10 years ago, and I'm doing this full time. And I also teach meditation. I've been teaching meditation full time when I was in my 20s for 10 years, went to law school, so part time up until about 10 years ago, and now I'm doing that also full time as a nonprofit. So I teach a meditation technique, turning within meditation. You can just look up my name or look that up on the internet. We won't talk a lot about that today, but I'll reference my journey that started with meditation and how I got here in this place where I know so much about the afterlife. But the meditation technique is very easy. There's no controlling the mind. You're not clearing the mind of thoughts. Very, very easy to practice. It's not like 99.9% of the meditation techniques out there. It's very different. And you only have to do it 10 to 15 minutes each time, twice a day. There's no cultural, no religious anything that goes along with it. Very, very easy. I taught the first meditation courses in the history of the U.S. Army in Korea on all the U.S. Army bases, all the U.S. Air Force bases. I taught on the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. And I taught the first meditation courses in the history of West Point Military Academy in New York. So I've taught corporations, universities, meditation, and now I teach on Zoom. So I'm in 68 countries now, teaching meditation, helping people with afterlife issues and overcoming the fear of death. I have an Overcoming the Fear of Death foundation that I help people with, overcoming the fear of death. Okay? So, but today we're going to talk about my afterlife and reincarnation theories that I'm going to start teaching again. I took a break for about 6 months. I'm going to start teaching again at the end of this month, September 29th, 2024. We're in 2024 now, people are watching the recording. September 29th, I'm going to start that series again. It's a 6-part series, and it happens every other Sunday. So I give you a week off to kind of absorb and catch up and so forth. Watch the recording again if you want to. I send everybody a recording. It's a live session. Goes 2 hours each. 6 sessions, 2 hours each, every other Sunday starting September 29th, 10 a.m. in the morning Pacific time. So 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 o'clock on the East Coast. Anybody who's watching this in Europe, you can do the time zone changes and so forth, or in Asia. This is the 18th time of teaching this 6-part series. I created it in 2018. I'm not sure when I'm going to do another one. I've cut it back now, so I'm doing them once or twice a year. I was doing them 3, 4 times a year sometimes at first, but I have a lot of other stuff going on and so forth. I'm doing more individual sessions with people as well. I call them spiritual coaching sessions. Again, I take a non-religious approach to everything I do. So those of you who've worked with me before, you know that. I embrace everybody's religious, cultural beliefs about death and dying. People who believe in God, don't believe in God, not sure about believing in God, agnostic, atheist, very religious, somewhere in between, doesn't matter where you are. I help everybody in the world. So I'm cross-cultural, cross-belief system, cross everything. I'm a humanistic approach person. If you are human, I'm helping you, and I help animals too, I've been told. I've been told by some of the animal owners that I've helped them. So, do animals have souls? Yes, they do. So I have lots of experience with animals, and I've communicated with animals on the other side, or animals who've gone to the other side, etc. So my Afterlife series, as I said, 6 parts. And as I already said, it's a non-religious approach to looking at the afterlife and reincarnation possibilities. We will look through different people's religious lenses sometimes. When you ask me a question in the class, you can ask me through a religious lens, and I'll look through that lens and I'll answer the question through that lens. But what I'm saying is, when I say I take a non-religious approach, I mean, I'm not pushing my beliefs on people. That's what I mean by that. So you keep your own beliefs. I tell my students, take what I say, however I say it, and decide whether it makes sense to you or not, and shelve the rest. Put the stuff on your shelf behind you, wherever, and you may take it off and look at it, what I said 2 months later, or 2 years later, or never. It doesn't matter to me. I do not have an agenda to try to persuade people. I am a teacher. I am not a preacher. Preachers want to persuade. I have nothing wrong with that, but that's not my approach. My approach is to teach concepts to people, help people understand better what's going on. And if they don't believe that my experiences of the other side are what they are, that's okay too. You don't have to believe what my experiences are, and you don't have to buy into my interpretation of the experiences. But I've thought a lot about this because my experiences go back 50 years this lifetime. This lifetime, as Kelvin Chin, I started opening up to the other side 50 years ago, and with my past life memories, and I did not believe in past lives or reincarnation. I didn't believe in it. And yet I started having experiences that I couldn't explain any other way. And I didn't believe in heaven or an afterlife either. And then I started having communications with the other side spontaneously. They communicated with me, is what happened. That's how it started. And I thought I was making it up. I thought I was imagining stuff. And that happened in the mid-1980s. So this has been going on for me for a long, long time. My past life memories opened up in the mid-1970s. Long time. So this is not unusual stuff for me. It's very familiar stuff to me. And I've had so many thousands of touches, we'll call them, experiences or communications or touches with the other side, thousands, since in the last 40, 45 years, that I have a lot of different perspectives and ways to look at stuff, having had so many different experiences. You imagine yourself going to New York City and only going there once. I don't know if anybody already lives there, but imagine you don't live in New York City, okay? And imagine you've never been to Phoenix, Arizona, or whatever, someplace you've never been to, okay? And you go there once, and you come back, and you've been there, and you have an experience, but what kind of perspective do you have about all the different nuances of New York City? Like, Anna, you lived there, so maybe some people here have only been there once, and so they go to New York City, and all they think of is the pizza, and they come back and it's just pizza to them. Another person goes to New York City and it's just built skyscrapers because they just came there. They came there from Ottumwa, Iowa, a little town in Iowa, and they've never even been to Des Moines, Iowa, and they just fly to New York City, and it's like, what? I live amongst pig farms. That's it. Farms and farms and land and land and land and lots of pigs. And all of a sudden they land in Manhattan, and they go, their whole experience and what they would describe New York City as would be skyscrapers, cement, tons of people. Somebody else goes to New York City and they go, it's all about shopping, because they go there and there's like stores there that they've never seen before, and they can't get stuff except in New York City compared to where they live. People have different experiences if you just go there once. But Anna, you live there, so you know about the shopping, you know about the skyscrapers, you know about the great bagels and the pizza and this and that and the other thing. You know about that. You know about all this stuff. But somebody goes there once and they're impressed by one thing, and it's the museum. It's the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and that's how they characterize New York City or Central Park or whatever, So it's in a similar way. You find a lot of people who talk about afterlife stuff have had an NDE, and that's a real experience. It's not like they didn't go to New York City. They went to New York City, or they went to, we'll call heaven, we'll say, and they had an NDE, but their experience is usually they go once. Or, sometimes you'll run into people who have 2 NDEs or 3 or 4 NDEs. But even then, that's 2 or 3 or 4. That's a lot of NDEs. Hopefully, I've actually helped somebody who had 4 NDEs, and he was freaked out about living and dying, having had four different NDEs. But it's a small database. It's a small amount of data, small amount of experience. I've had thousands of experiences on the other side. So I have a different perspective than a lot of people. So when you take my class, I share some of this with you, and you'll ask me questions, and the answers are coming from that very broad database, we'll say, okay? When we talk about reincarnation in my series, my memories go back 6,000 years. So you guys, Olga, you guys know this from me being having spoken to this group before. My memories go back 6,000 years to ancient Sumeria. I was a businessman there, and I have memories of about 25 lifetimes so far. And I've probably had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes over the 6,000 years, sorry. But I have memories from a couple dozen, okay? Out of the couple of dozen, most of them are just no-name people, just not well-known people. But a few of them are historically known people. So in this book that I have back here, this book is my After the Afterlife, it's called. This book, my most recent book, I talk about some of those lifetimes, or I talk about all the lifetimes that I remember. And I talk about it in great detail. In this particular series, this time teaching it, as I mentioned, this is the 18th time I'm teaching it since 2018. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. When I talk about my afterlife stuff, I'm going to weave in more teaching about the personality traits that I've noticed that I've carried for at least 6,000 years now with me, and in different lifetimes. So what I'm telling my students, and if any of you sign up for this Afterlife series, you should get this book and read this as much as possible read as much of it as possible before I get to session 3, which is about, I don't know, 2, 4, 6, 7 weeks into the series, 6 weeks into the series. Read that book first, because I'm going to spend less time getting into the details of all my different past lives and stuff. I'm going to spend less time on that, assuming that people have done their homework and read this book. And I want to spend more time talking about what I've learned in that 6,000-year journey that I am consciously aware of this lifetime. Okay? So that it can maybe open up your memories more if you're interested in exploring your past life memories. You don't have to explore your past life memories either in order to fully develop and get the benefit of your past life experiences. I'll talk about that in the series too, okay? So it's not necessary that you remember your past lives. I talk about our emotional patterns and how that opens us up to clearing old baggage from our past lives and helps us teach us more about who we are now today. Because ultimately it's all about living in the present and then moving forward, because the future is based on right now, the present. So how can we clear out the garbage and the clutter and the whatever, I just call it baggage, that we've accumulated for thousands of years. Each of us is maybe millions, I don't know, but a long time, more than this lifetime, we've been collecting stuff. And most of you, all of you probably can acknowledge that we've all been collecting lots of stuff this lifetime. So imagine if we've been collecting lots of stuff this lifetime, how much we've collected in other lifetimes that we're unaware of. So what I'm saying is that in these 6-part sessions, the series, we'll get into unfolding and uncluttering and getting rid of some of that junk too. By how? By clarifying our understanding about what goes on after we die. Because we're a lot of the clutter that we're carrying around is old religious and cultural belief systems, not just from this lifetime, but from other lifetimes too, for thousands of years. And you may have been, I don't know, but I know myself, I've been in many, many different cultures, but you may have been in many other cultures, in other religions. You may be Christian this lifetime, or Jewish, or Muslim, or whatever. But in another lifetime, you may have been a different religion. And you're carrying around remnants of that in your consciousness today that you are unconscious of, that's affecting your belief systems and your behavior and your thinking. And by uncluttering that, by getting more clarity, in other words, with what does make sense in terms of these various thinkings and beliefs about the afterlife, and what doesn't make sense, and get rid of the stuff that doesn't make sense, whether it's religious or cultural, or just you went to a spiritual workshop and it wasn't religious or cultural, but they taught stuff that doesn't make sense. Getting rid of that clutter helps propel you forward in your eternal journey of life, this time and whenever afterwards. So that's kind of a nutshell version, like a summary version of what I do in the 6-part series that's different from a lot of these afterlife classes out there. I don't just talk about the afterlife and just talk about what it's like. I talk about a lot of these concepts and ideas about the afterlife and how some of them need a little tweaking here and there. Our understanding about them needs to be tweaked a little here and there to make that concept that people have been talking about for 50, 500, 5,000 years, whatever the concept is, so that it makes sense. Because the root of suffering, my experience over my memories for 6,000 years, is the root of suffering is lack of clear thinking inconsistent thinking leads to leads to beliefs that give rise to inconsistent behavior, and not just inconsistent, but behavior that leads us down a wrong path that can cause us suffering, mental anguish, anxiety, pain and suffering, however you want to describe that, okay? So my experience is the clearer we are about understanding some of these concepts and ideas about the afterlife and reincarnation and so forth, it will clear our minds up so that we don't have all that clutter, and it makes sense. And therefore we'll make better decisions in this lifetime, not just about spiritual stuff, but just life, because we don't often realize how much of our just daily life decisions are based on some spiritual belief, religious or cultural, that we may have been carrying around with us for thousands of years that may not be right. It may be off, it may be 80% right and 20% off, or flip it. It could be 80% off and 20% right. But I help people clear up the parts that are off so that our thinking is clearer. That's what I mean when I say clearer thinking, okay? All right, does that make sense? So we'll open up the questions in a second, but let me just say the six, how many fingers do I have? 5, 6, there we go. The six sessions, so these are the 6 sessions. So the first session, and again, there's every other Sunday, starting September 29th. And if you miss one, by the way, I record it, and then you can watch the recording. You miss 2, you miss 3. Some people don't even attend live. They just want to get the recordings, and so they register just for the recording. So it's up to you. But the first session is what happens after we die. So it's kind of the general overview. And I get into some specifics about things like time. There's a great misunderstanding. There's a widespread misunderstanding, unfortunately, about time. And so there is time on the other side. A lot of people say their time doesn't exist on the other side. It exists differently, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So yes, it's very, very different from here. But we talk about that and many other things about, the soul continuing and what continues, and how does your mind continue in the same way, or is it different, and all that kind of stuff. That's session 1. The second session, we talk about, can we get glimpses into the other side from this side? And that's where I talk about out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, and spiritually transformative experiences. So 3 different categories that a lot of spiritual teachers talk about. And NDEs is probably the one that most people have heard of, near-death experiences. And so the short answer is, to this group, we know, yes, you can get glimpses from this side into the other side. Can you communicate with somebody from this side into the other side, in the other side, your children, other dead loved ones, and so forth? Yes. And so are those glimpses? Yeah, those are glimpses into the other side, we would say. The third session, reincarnation. So that's when I get into this in more detail, this book this topic in more detail. And that's why I want you to read as much of this book as you can before session 3, because I'm going to get into more of what we can benefit from out of these past lives. I'm going to get into that and focus on that a little bit more this time, this 18th time I'm teaching this series. I'm going to focus on that more in session 3 than I have in the past. Session 4 is rewards and punishment. So sometimes people are afraid. Do we get rewarded or punished on the other side after we die? What if somebody kills himself by suicide? Do they get punished about that? There are many religious and cultural taboos about that. And so we debunk a lot of these things. So hell, karma, dharma, sin, those concepts, talk about that in the 4th session, okay? 5th session, I talk about, can friends and loved ones communicate with us from the other side? Of course, you guys know that, yes, yeah, it's possible. And we talk about that, and we talk about different signs and different ways that loved ones and so forth can communicate with us from the other side. And I weave in my experiences, but also other people's experiences in terms of that as well. So, by the way, so those of you who have my first book on overcoming the fear of death have probably read some of those communications from the other side, stories that I have a lot of stories in this one, Overcoming the Fear of Death, about people communicating from the other side to various friends and relatives of mine and so forth. So I captured those stories in that book. But we'll talk about that in this series. Okay, that's session 5. Session 6, the last session, is what part of us continues after we die. So after we die, something continues, but how can we talk about it? What's the it that is continuing after we die? You know, we'll talk a little bit about that in the first session, but we get into it in much, much greater detail in the 6th session of the 6-part series. Okay. And we'll also talk about this idea of eternity. Eternity means no beginning, no end. There's no start, no end to it. That's what eternal means, or eternity means. We'll talk about that. And then we'll also talk about, in that sixth session of the series, we'll talk about soul plans. What about getting together with our dead loved ones? What about your children getting together with you again in a future lifetime? Is that possible? Short answer is yes. You know, a good example are my 2 kids in this lifetime. Okay, and we'll talk about that. I talk about some stories about my children in this book, about my past lives and their past lives, and how we connected the dots in this lifetime to figure out where we were connected and all that in the past. So that's the short answer to that. Yes, soul plans, yes. But what do they always work out? The soul plan always work out? And how come they, and short answer is no. How come? And we'll get into that. You know, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Not everybody has a soul plan that in as much detail as somebody else. You know, they vary. We'll get into that in much greater detail in the 6th session. So that's the 6 sessions. That's the kind of the overview. If you're interested, go to kelvinchin.org. You see that under my name there. That's my more spiritual website. I have 4 websites. You can go to the bottom of any page on any of my websites, and you'll see links to the other, hot links to the other websites. Like you'll see the words Overcoming the Fear of Death, for example, on the bottom of the, you know, the different, all the pages of the other websites, and it'll connect you to the Overcoming the Fear of Death website. You'll see, I think, Turning Within, it'll say Turning Within Foundation or something like that on the bottom of any page, and that will take you to my meditation website. But kelvinchin.org is my more spiritual website, you could call it. It covers everything that I do. And so if you go to that website, if you're interested in checking out this 6-part series more, go there and click on the page that says Afterlife 6-part series. And you will see some short preview videos, 15, 20 minutes long, something like that, where I talk about the class a little bit more, kind of like what I'm doing now with you guys. And then you'll see how to register and so forth. Okay. We'll open up the questions. Well, let me just say, there's a cost, there's a fee for the classes. It's $150 for all 6 sessions. They go about 2 hours each. So it's around 12 hours worth of stuff. And as I said, you'll get the recording afterwards. So I try to price things very reasonably. And those people who have already taken my class only pay $50 to take the class again and again and again. Some people have taken it. This will be their 18th time taking it. For some people, they'll sit in because they find that every time I do it, I switch some stuff up every once. You know, I change a little bit this and that. Plus, it's a different group of people, and they'll ask different questions, and different material come out, and so forth. But I turn no one away for financial reasons. So if somebody is out of work, or you're on fixed income, and it's tough for you to, you know, et cetera, then financially, you just send me a text or a message, and, you know, we figure it out. You know, you're in the class. You know, people make a small donation to the nonprofit. It all goes to my nonprofit work because I help people, as I said, in so many different countries. In these other countries, some of the countries, you know, they only make $200 or $300 a year is their annual income. So I'm not charging them my US rates, you know? So people who can't afford to pay are helping pay for the other students I'm helping around the world, and even here in the US, people who may be having difficulty financially. I never turn anybody away. Nobody ever. Okay. So questions? Questions? Paula, you got to unmute yourself. Unmute. Hi, Luann.
Hi,
Hey, Lorraine.
I'm sorry I'm late. I thought it was at 8.
That's okay. You can watch the recording afterwards. But Paula, you got a question?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with you, so I haven't read any of your books. I'm new, so it's nice to meet you. But my question is kind of long and it might be confusing. I opened up to a group with Anne Marie for the first time, and she suggested that I come to this meeting. And I have a hard time losing my son. As I've tried to live through this, I sometimes wonder why it seems that some people go through life and just they go through life and they have normal struggles and they have a little hardship here, but their lives kind of go easier. And how come like some people seem to have one thing after another, traumas in their childhood and whatnot? And like, I'm wondering, like in my own head, I'm thinking, are you supposed to experience so much? And when you do experience all of the tragedies, if you've experienced that, when you go on to your next life, have you learned it? And do other people maybe have to go to another life to learn more, to learn more lessons? I don't know if it's making sense, but.
Yeah, I understand your question, and it totally makes sense. So the bottom line, and I get into all of everything you just, I'll give you I'll specifically answer your question, but I'll try to do it in a way that's short, because I cover all of these points that you're kind of raising in much greater detail in this 6-part series, And Luann, we were just saying, a 6-part series, it's two hours each session. So it's like 12 hours total. And I do it every other Sunday starting. So I'm doing one September 29th, it's starting, and every other Sunday after that. And my next one I won't do till 2025 sometime. I'm not sure when. So the first thing I would say to you, Paula, is there's no supposed to's. There's no plan that every soul has that, you got a laundry list of stuff and it's 10 things long or 1,010 things long items and you got to learn. It's no. Everybody's learning stuff about all kinds of stuff all the time, or not. Sometimes people, they get hit over the head a few times before they start paying attention, right? So everybody's different is the point. And there's no supposed to's, and that's what I mean. There's no supposed to. There's no absolute, this is the way. And so to answer your question, really, there's no reason that you're looking for a reason. There's no specific known reason. There are many reasons that we could talk about, possible reasons, but there's no way of knowing exactly. Oh, this person had a really easy lifetime, and this one was like, wow, running into dead ends and barriers all the time. How much of that is self created by the person, not paying attention and just not following the clues, hanging out with bad people, basically, who are cruel and abusive, and geez, I wonder why that person gets, treated cruelly and abused. Well, they keep choosing to hang out with them. How does this really nice person who is very conscious and aware, why did they get abused in that situation over here? So there are many possible reasons explanations why that can happen, but there is no planned, because of what you're kind of was implying is that there's some implicit something for people to have that they have to learn. And once they've learned all that stuff, then they're good and then they have an easy life. That was, you were hinting at that. And that's not the case. I mean, I know for myself, my memories going back 6,000 years, that I've tried to pay attention the whole time. I try, you get distracted by this and that. Nobody's perfect, right? But I have consciously tried to pay attention and learn. And still I skin my knees, more than skin my knees sometimes, hit a roadblock sometimes. And sometimes, Paula, it's me, as I said, self-created. Sometimes it's not. It's completely out of my control. And it's my reality is sometimes affected, just like yours is, by lots of people you don't know. I mean, I don't know people in Congress. I know nobody in Congress in the United States of America. I don't know anybody in Congress. Are they affecting my life this time, and many lives? Yes, they are. I don't have control over every decision they make. I don't have control over when Congresswoman or Congressman so-and-so goes to the bathroom and misses a vote. I'm not controlling their bladder. I mean, there's jokingly, but seriously, we don't have control over everything in the universe is the point. So one of my teachings that I've been saying, and this is my second book, Marcus Aurelius Updated. It's a collection of 67 essays that I've written this lifetime about all different life concepts. But one of the things that I say in this many times is control what we can control and let go of what we can't control. Easily said, not easily done, right? But control the stuff that we can control, and then I can't control when the congressperson is going to the bathroom. I'm not worried about that. Now, it may sound silly, but we do variations of that. We get worked up over stuff that we cannot control. We do. We all do. And so I say, the path to happiness and inner contentment is get rid of that. Just stop. Just catch yourself earlier. And I used to be a little bit more of a control freak. So, I'm not as chill as I am now, even this lifetime. Okay. So I don't know if that helps. Does that help?
Yeah, it does somewhat. It's the guilt too. It's the guilt with watching your child struggle and then help, he's helped other people even in his struggle. And it's like, how much can one person suffer? And then it just feels like they didn't get that break. And to feel guilty because you were in a situation that caused some of his trauma when he was a kid and stuff like that. So the guilt of it, I feel like I played part of that in where he, how he ended up.
So I draw a distinction I'll give you a tip. I draw a distinction between guilt and responsibility. All right? It sounds like the same thing to a lot of people, especially if you're feeling guilty. I feel responsible. But you have a responsibility to do the best you can. You don't have the responsibility to be perfect and to persuade other people who may seem to appear to would benefit from your ideas that you would persuade them, suggest to them. You don't have a responsibility to whether they listen to you or not. So you neither have a responsibility to be perfect yourself, nor do you have a responsibility of what your suggestion is heard or not heard by the other person. So your responsibility is only to yourself to be the best version as you can. That's it. That's it. So guilt to me arises out of that when we have a misunderstanding about our role in what I just said. When we think that we should be perfect, we hold ourselves to it, even though we think, oh, I'm not perfect, but we hold ourselves to a yardstick of perfection. We can say, oh, I'm not perfect, but then you kind of beat yourself up and you hold yourself to the yardstick of perfection. you're not believing. You're not believing what you're saying. You're not walking your talk. You're saying you're not perfect, but you're holding yourself to a state of perfection. Okay? Don't do that. That's the road to suffering. That's a guaranteed road to suffering, and people do that. We especially we as parents. Okay, I have 2 children. You know, do I regret some of the things that I have done? Yes. Do I feel guilty about that? No. So regret and guilt are not the same thing either. I can feel sorry and regretful about something I may have done or said with my children, but I don't feel guilty about it because the guilt arises from me holding myself to a state of to a yardstick of perfection. No, I know that I make mistakes sometimes, and I try not to. I don't say that my mistakes are all, oh yeah, fine, make mistake. No, I'm not cavalier about my mistake making. I don't want to make them, but I understand that I'm not perfect. I don't know if that
Right.
helped. Right?
Yes, yes.
Nuanced. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. Suzanne.
I was just going to say, in the uniqueness of losing a child, I think I was just talking to my husband about this the other day, and I'm 7 years on to this. You know, we're still talking about this thing, still processing. You know,
Sure.
probably
Yeah.
for the rest of our lives.
Oh, forever. You know, you'll be processing this for a long.
Many phases to this.
Yes.
So then I think it's built in that we look back and analyze because of the pain of losing a child. It's just probably, I don't know what equates to that. Probably nothing, in my opinion. But it begs you to look back, like, what have we done? How do we contribute to this? Blah, 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 blah. I think, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else, but I think good people with a conscience automatically do that. They search their actions, like, what did I do? But to be fair, like we were talking about, we also have to look at everything we did right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, good people have a tendency to say, oh gosh, what did I do wrong? What did I screw up? Well, yeah, we probably made a few mistakes. I think growing up too, the way I did, I used to not, understand why it was the way it was. But now, and I'm not grateful for it, but I understand it now because I don't think that if I would have had that trauma and been able to deal with it, that I would be able to deal with this, if that makes sense. And I barely did. It took me many years. So I think guilt is built in, but I think that we have, for me, my husband and I talk about this a lot. We have to look at the whole picture. It's not just guilt. And my son asked me one time when he was here in the flesh, Mom, why'd you do this, that, the other? And I was like this with him. He's talking about silly stuff. Probably they weren't silly to him, but to me, it's like, well, why did you make us eat green beans or something like that? Or why did you make me come home at 12 o'clock? Or, because he was like a rebel. I'd say, look, I probably wouldn't do it that way now, but I did the best that I could do at the time. And I'm so glad that I got to say that to him because he just said, yeah, okay, he could accept that. I said, and now I know better. So I grew as he grew. And I don't carry a lot of guilt because I feel him all the time. I know he's helping me from the other side, but that takes a long time to get to that where you go from hoping and believing to knowing. That has helped me a lot, but I'm going to grieve for the rest of my life. But you have to look at the whole thing. It's not just guilt.
Right. Yeah. Perspective is the word that
we loved our children. I mean, we loved our children. We do anything for them. We trade places with them in a minute. Although I wouldn't want them here and me there because I think they got it pretty good.
Perspective is what you're describing is how I think of what
yes, exactly. Perspective.
You know, in balance. It's balance and perspective, and yes, there are good things and there are not so good things. And sometimes it's 20-80, sometimes it's 80-20. It doesn't matter. It is,
Human.
yeah. It's all part of life. And that's the thing. And to your point, I'd say the blessing versus the tragedy. The blessing would be that out of that, you learn something, as you say. The tragedy is people who don't, and then they do it over and over, whatever the it is, the cruel, the abuse, the not listening. There's a spectrum. It's not just being abusive. There's not listening, not hearing, or whatever. It's like the spectrum. But whatever it is, they do it over and over and over again. And they just not listen, not listen, not listen. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, with children after children after children. That's a tragedy to me.
Let's hope that doesn't happen to any of us.
Well, I think by definition, it's not going to happen to any of you. The fact that you're here means that you're self-aware.
Growth.
But 8 billion people on the planet, and out of the 8 billion, there are more than however many people are in this community group here. There's a lot of them who wouldn't even want to have this conversation. Those are the ones who, this goes to one of the myths. A lot of what I'm doing in this 6-part series is I debunk a lot of myths. And one of the myths out there is that everybody is here to grow. No, everybody is here and can grow. That's the accurate way of saying it. Everybody is here on planet Earth and can grow, but that doesn't mean that everybody can. It's a choice.
Well, that relates to Paula's question. Like, basically, I'm paraphrasing her here, but why is it easy for them and so impossible for me? And it's not even a being a victim. It's just you're asking, like, because we all know people that are getting their nails done, or but I just laugh about it because I think, okay, well, that'll be me in my next life if I come back. I just keep my sense of humor because I'm like, I can't relate to those people. I can be polite, but as my one friend said, we don't run on the same vibration as those people. We've been through too much, and we can't unring the bell. It's not going to happen.
Well, that goes to something. I'll give you a little preview, a little tidbit, a little, sneak peek, I guess, into something that I do talk about in the 6-part series, which is what I'm doing. As I already said earlier, I'm a teacher. I'm not a preacher. I'm not here to change people's belief systems, but I am here to give more clarity of thinking so that you each can independently then be a clearer thinker, because I'm not with you all the time, and then nobody else. You're with yourself all the time. So that when you're in your next lifetime, you'll take some of these tidbit and ideas, and you won't even remember, oh, the Kelvin Chin told me. I don't need the credit. I just planting the seeds in you so that maybe your next lifetime, or while you're on the other side, this goes to your point that you just reminded me of, Suzanne, is you're on the other side now with some of your already dead loved ones, let's just say hypothetically, planning to come back again. And you make better decisions on the other side about which families you guys want to come back into. You're more clear in your thinking. You're more self-aware when you're on the other side before you come into the next lifetime, and maybe you have your next lifetime that is easier.
Well, maybe we take a little break.
No guarantees, but it's what I said earlier, can control what you can control and let go what you can't. And you can't control that to some degree.
Knowing me, I'll probably choose something hard.
Well, but that's your choice, Suzanne.
I know, but I don't know, but I'd like it to be easy.
Well, then make that choice is my point.
I think I will after this lifetime.
Yeah.
I'm done with the hard.
Yeah, the point is we have choice, but be more, here's another tidbit, little sneak peek. Be more specific, Suzanne, about how you express that desire on the other side. Don't just come in and say, hey, I want it to be really easy, because you could come into a lifetime and then get thrown into prison, which is real easy because you don't have to cook for yourself and da 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 da.
That's
I'm
true.
just some bizarre extreme example. But
I
you know
have,
what?
I have a question that's off the subject
Go ahead.
a little bit. I'm deviating. I've been
Hmm.
thinking about this lately. So here we are, the people that is probably, and I can't, like I said, this is just my opinion, but I don't think there's anything worse than losing a child. I just do not. I can't imagine what it would be. So, but that is, of course, my opinion. So here I am experiencing with all these other people that I know, the loss of really our soulmate, you know. And in the case of women, we carried these children, we gave birth to them, we cared for them. There's a biological bond. I mean, it's not just, you know, up here, it's biology, in my opinion. And it can't even be put into words, the bond. Why are we facing, I want your opinion on this, why are we facing this type of challenge in our lives right now when the world seems to be on the precipice of something? What put us here now? That has to be the hardest life.
Oh, well, you're looking at it through a 21st century lens naturally, because we
That's
are,
where we are.
that's where we are right now.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering why now.
Right? But this has been going on since time immemorial, millions of years, mothers losing children. And if you want to go back
True.
10, 50,000, 150,000 years, it was even worse. I mean, I'm not demeaning the losses that each of you have had. I'm just, look, I have a memory, and it's a memory, okay? But I have a memory of, out of my 15 children, 9 of them died before age 10.
Yeah.
6 of them lived after 10 years old. Out
Yeah.
of, this is one lifetime, okay?
Wow.
So this was about 2,000 years ago. So, it's not that there's all this horrific stuff going on in the world, and now there's not a link between the two like you're making. It just happens to be you're making the link. You're making the link. This has been going on, losing children and children predeceasing parents since humans
I'm not
were.
really thinking so much about the children passing as I am the challenge that we're facing on top of what's going on in the world. And I feel this, and not to get too political, but I feel this is a unique time because, well, I won't get into the politics, but you know, I mean, people were fighting with swords 1,000 years ago. They're not fighting with swords anymore, you know? So,
Yeah, but
you know what I'm getting at? It's just like, why now?
well, it's not why. See, I'm trying to disabuse you of this why now thing. This things are messed up on planet Earth in 21st century right now,
Oh,
2020.
yeah.
It is. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying it isn't. We have but there's more fear now than there has been. Fear comes and goes on planet Earth a lot. Now we have social media, and now we have internet. It's more widespread on planet Earth now,
Yeah.
and fear is actually, to some degree, misplaced. It's exaggerated. You have the 24/7 news cycle. You see
Right.
the same murder over and over and over again, or the same school shooting over and over and over again, and people they incorrectly make this assumption that, and it's not conscious, it's subconscious, that the world is a really unsafe place because they've seen the same school shooting on their TV. People, and there's a lot of people who do this, they leave their TVs on all day long. It's a mistake. I tell my students, do not watch so much news. It gives you a distorted perception of life.
Well,
Here-
that's the definition of cable news. They don't have enough to report, so they got to keep.
No. So you're asking it why it seems to be more now than in other times in Earth's history. I think that's why, one reason why it seems more widespread. News travels very fast, etc. You know, it's all literally at light speed via, you know, the internet and satellites and so forth.
I just think with the
That said, though, here's the thing, though.
Mhm.
Perspective on this stuff, even that, because you and well, I have a past life in the Second World War, and I don't know about your past lives, but let's just talk about what your memories are.
Just one.
Most people right now do not remember what life was like between 1939 and 1945. In those 6 years,
Yeah.
70 million people died worldwide.
Yeah.
Today, with today's population, because the population has grown, that would be about 270 million people dying on planet Earth in a 6-year period. Can you imagine that? 270 million people on planet Earth today, over the last 6 years, died.
Yeah.
So that's what happened in the Second World War. You're talking about something that's terrible now, and I get it. And school shootings, you know, they use the phrase now in media, mass shooting. Mass shooting, 6 people is a mass shooting now. 4 people is a mass shooting, okay? Do you know that 1,000 years ago, in your backyard, let's say you in your football field, in your town football field, on that size football field or 2 of those football fields 1,000 years ago, it was not uncommon for 5 or 10 or 15,000 people to die in an afternoon on those 2 football fields in a battle in an afternoon. Okay? The Battle of Cannae happened in about 5 or 6, 7 hours. And the historians tell us, who were eyewitnessed it, the Battle of Cannae, 2,200 years ago or something like that, the conservative number is 70,000 people died on one battlefield in about 5 or 6 hours. 70,000 people in about 5 or 6 hours in the size of maybe 6 or 8 football fields. Okay?
Yeah.
So we have to keep perspective. And I think cable news, social media they're fueled by helping us not keep perspective, because if fear keeps people watching.
True.
Fear creates authoritarian governments, because people in fear think, oh, we need control, we're out of control, and that person is promising control, and then they take over control, and then you have an authoritarian government.
I often think too, as I'm having those thoughts, I also think you brought up World War II. I often think, well, what are those people like? Or the Great Depression, or, you know, I mean, there's
Yeah.
other times.
Oh yeah, and
I think
people.
it's hard. I think it's very hard to keep perspective though when you've lost a child. That's my only point.
Well,
we're
that-
vulnerable. We're a vulnerable group.
yeah, yeah.
That's the problem, or the challenge, I should call it.
So there's 2 things that I help this group in particular with, and many of you have already taken some of my classes. This one class is the one we're talking about, that's starting on September 29th, about Afterlife. And that's clarifying our misunderstandings about certain concepts, because these misunderstandings about concepts about the afterlife create suffering. They eventually create suffering, because you
Yeah.
make assumptions and you take certain actions based on that, and it leads you down the wrong road. The other thing that I do is I teach meditation. So you guys know that I've taught meditation for many, many years, and I've taught many people in this group to meditate. And the meditation I teach is not like 99% of the techniques out there. It's not controlling. You're not trying to clear your mind. You're not trying to focus your breath. You're not focusing on this and that and concentrating, and it's not that. That's why you only have to do it 10 to 15 minutes each time, twice a day. And Lorraine's taken my class, and Lorraine has a
Can you explain a little bit about that, Calvin, just briefly?
yeah, so it's a very easy technique. It's eyes closed. You're not focusing on anything in particular. There is a technique that I teach you, and it's a 4-day class. And Lorraine, maybe you can say something about it. But it's a 4-day class, a couple hours each class, and I teach a group class, a public group class once a month. So I have another class in October that I have, I think, 3 seats left in, and then I'm teaching November and December and so forth. And I also teach it privately one-on-one. People want to pay more to my nonprofit, and then I teach them one-on-one privately. But I teach a group class every month. And again, like I said earlier, for those of you who joined late, I don't turn anybody away for financial reasons. There's a fee, but I don't turn anyone away for financial. Okay. Lorraine, you want to talk about how it's helped you with your? Go ahead.
Well, I got to tell you guys, the turning within meditation has literally changed my life. It has, you know, she was my only child that I lost. I only had her. And so, I mean, she was all I knew for 24 years. And I'm the youngest in my family, therefore, you know, everybody's gone. And I never felt lonely, but I knew that I was alone. And so I tried to find ways that would help me. And then I met Kelvin, and the meditations are amazing. It's easy. It's because I'm the kind of person that, oh, ice cream, and then, you know, I'm distracted. And so I never had to worry about that. I didn't have to focus on any one thing. And so it is amazing, ladies. It has helped me very much. And I'm very grateful to Kelvin because it made a big change in my life.
Thanks, Lorraine. I'm so happy it's helped you so much.
That's great to hear.
It's a different process. It helps people without trying to stop your thoughts from coming, because that is possible to do. It's impossible. I'm sure everybody has tried, and it makes it worse. More thoughts.
I would not be succeeding at that.
No. And so that's what most people think meditation is. No, it's not. It should not be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, and I argue it shouldn't be that way. And that's not the way I teach it, because think about it this way. Most meditation techniques out there are using, and I've been meditating myself since I was 19 years old, and I was very stressed out. That's why I learned. But most techniques out there, I've thought about this for a long time. I distilled it down to this one sentence. Most techniques out there are using waking state rules. What are waking state rules? Pay attention, focus, look through the windshield, look at the traffic, don't get in a car, when you're driving a car, right? Look, pay attention when you're walking down the stairs, look at the stairs, those are waking state rules. That's very important when you're awake, not when you're meditating, and not when you're going to sleep. If you use waking state rules to go to sleep, you stay up all night. Oh, just pay attention to your relax. Oh, just relax. Just feel the relaxation. Oh, don't you feel relaxed now? Oh, just pay attention to your feet, and then pay attention to your knees and your shoulders. You're awake all night doing that. No, that's not the right rules to apply when you go to sleep. Same thing in meditation. So I thought, why are they applying all these waking state rules of meditation? So inappropriate. So instead, I apply meditation rules in the class. I teach my students the meditation rules. Don't misapply waking state rules. Use those when you're awake, when you're driving a car, when you're in the supermarket trying to figure out which kind of pasta to get or whatever. It's like, yeah, those are waking state rules. That's the waking state mind you want to use in the supermarket, not meditation, right? Yeah. Did you want to say something else, Larry?
just remember, we're always going to be moms that lost our child. And there's always going to be something that comes up, the trigger. I always said I never had a trigger point, where nothing will trigger me. And I've been feeling kind of goofy lately because I'm coming up on 4 years. And I couldn't understand, well, what the heck? Well, I figured it out. That's, I guess I am triggered. It's coming up.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop me. I've made it 4 years and I'm going to keep on going. I have a lot of health issues I've overcome. And between meditating and just trying to understand that we are always going to be a mom that lost a child. And you're always going to have that with you. But you have a choice to make things better. And meditation has definitely been better for me.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, Lorraine. And let
Yeah.
me add to that. Grief, let's talk about grief a little bit. So grief and losing a loved one, a child, as you all have, the grief, the sadness never goes away. We never forget, we never lose that feeling, the feeling of loss, however you want to describe that. I'm just using that and just calling it grief. The grief never goes away. The issue is not trying to get rid of the grief. The issue is, from my perspective, because I've done a lot of grief counseling too, it is how can this, I'm kind of paraphrasing what Lorraine's saying, is how can we move forward with our lives and still live our lives along with, we're walking alongside the grief in a sense. The grief, we never lose it.
Exactly.
But do we get overshadowed by it? That's what I can help you get rid of. The overshadowing, the consumption. I'm consumed by the grief. That's what my work helps reduce, because it never goes away, but it can stop overshadowing you eventually. And so that's where the meditation can help, and then this Afterlife series class can help. It's
I
reduced.
had to choose to be better or bitter, and I chose to better myself.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I'm going, and we also need to, meditation would probably be a good thing for all of us too, if when those
Yeah.
moments do hit, to have some form to come down, because as we've all experienced, it never gets any easier. I'm going on 17 years next month. And I just, in the last week, just thinking about October 7th coming up is torture. And 1 minute I'm thinking of ways to honor her and remember her. And the next minute I'm crying and don't even want to think about it. And that's when the taking a deep breath, and like Lorraine said, you can, either be bitter or be better. And at those hard times, that's when that being better thought really helps. Because
It's really about coping. It's
Yeah.
right. Can we cope better with our grief? And therefore, if we can cope better, we can live our lives with our surviving husband, or maybe you have surviving other children, or nieces and nephews and friends and whatever it is, whoever they are. Can we live our lives more fully, even with the loss, the terrible loss, which we never forget, right?
Mhm.
It's it's not an either or, it's a both and
Both
situation,
and.
right?
Mhm.
And so
Like for me, I know I'm saying this wrong, but I have to accept that the grief will always be there and make peace with the grief so that I can allow myself to say, hey, it's here. It's not going anywhere.
Mm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
have to get real honest with myself, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other aspects of me, especially because I know my son's right over my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I know this is a terribly cliche that people say, but it is the truth. Our kids don't want us to be like, in the gutter. And, there's just, but it's easier said than done. Like when you get a big anniversary coming up or a trigger or even looking at cereals in the cereal aisle the first 6 months, it can be anything. And even after several years, it can be something. Like we had our 50th anniversary this weekend and the waiter comes up to the table and says, "You have a table for 8 here?" And I turned to my husband and I said, "Actually 9, but one of them won't need a seat." And he just laughed. But it takes a long time to get to that point.
Right.
Mm.
Long time.
Let me give you an analogy that kind of illustrates what Suzanne and Lorraine were talking about and so forth, and Carmen. So I use this in some of my classes. It's like our mind, our consciousness, our mind is like a ship with a big deck. Okay, imagine a ship with a big deck with 100 deck chairs on it. Lots of deck chairs. The deck chairs are like our thoughts and emotions, our feelings, and in this case, our grief and so forth, and our thinking about the cereal and walking down the cereal, in supermarket, whatever. Those are the deck chairs, and they're all different deck chairs, right? They're different colors, different thoughts, different emotions, feelings, etc. But the deck is like our mind; it's our consciousness. My approach is that with the meditation that we were just talking about, with a technique, it's not about rearranging the deck chairs. Some meditation techniques are all about rearranging the deck chairs. Oh, let's get prettier deck chairs over here. Change your thoughts, whatever. What my approach is expands the deck size. Now you have the capacity of the deck is much bigger. Now the deck is 5, 10, 15, 200, 50, 100 times bigger. That's what the technique that I teach does. Then you can change the arrangement of the deck chairs. You can get rid of some of the broken ones, that don't serve you, some of the thought patterns that really don't help you anymore, that kind of stuff. You can do that much easier because
Like guilt.
What's that?
Like guilt.
All of that. And you will feel less guilty because the guilt deck chairs have more room to spread out on a larger deck. So you don't feel that's where I talked about not feeling so overwhelmed or consumed by the experience of the deck chair because your deck is bigger. That's what Lorraine is talking about when she feels better. She doesn't notice, oh, my deck is big. I'm just using that as an analogy, but that's what's happening. Where I teaching the technique, it allows the mind to expand its conscious capacity. That's the thing.
Seems to take a lot of courage to step back into life when it's really the thing that helps us the most.
Yeah.
We're not abandoning our children.
Oh, no.
My new goal is just to remember her
Mhm.
as long as I can, because as I get older and I keep forgetting stuff
Mhm.
all the time, I was like, oh my goodness, that was going to be a new thing. Now I'm going to have to worry about forgetting about her. And, and then would it matter because I wouldn't remember? So I was like, okay, stop. That's just another rabbit hole to go down.
And that's a concern about your biological body, not your soul.
Right.
The
Yeah.
soul is going to never forget.
Right.
And I talk about that. That's when I talk about in session 1 of the Afterlife series, I talk about what happens to our mind when we die, when our biological body dies, what happens to our mind. And in that case, Lorraine, let's just make believe, Lorraine, just for sake of discussion here, that you do forget 20 years from now.
Right.
When you die, biologically, all of that forgetfulness that's caused by your biology is not it goes away. In other words, you remember because your biology is what making you forget, not your soul. So
Because I've taken your class,
yeah,
I know that.
yeah,
And so I'm like, okay, you were just about ready to go down this rabbit hole where, you
Right.
know, but you showed me, differently. So,
right, right.
but it's a thought for somebody that hasn't taken your class. It crossed my mind.
Yeah.
So when
And
we get to the other side, we'll have clarity for everything that's ever happened. So that's
Yes.
built in. So I don't worry if I forget something.
yeah, much more clarity.
Oh yeah. Everything.
Yep.
We don't have a body to feed, obviously, on the other side. You don't have to go to a job, make money, put a roof over your head, all of that, literally a roof over your head. You don't. You don't.
So what do you do all day?
You do
I
what
mean,
you
like,
want.
we
You-
have a job, we have we have to eat, we have to sleep. What do you do all day over there?
So it depends what you want to do. You do what you want to do. Look, if you have you ever asked Anne Marie about her son, what he's doing on the other side, what he showed her?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. He's helping. She told me that he showed her, like driving up on in a Cadillac or some car, whatever, limousine, some car, in front of a church, and he went into the church and he escorted this young girl out into the car, and he's guiding. So he's like a guide. So he chooses to do that. You could choose just to go hang out at the beach, but her Anne Marie's son is choosing to help
Right.
other children, to guide them in transition.
I
Help.
know the very first time I was like in a group kind of like this, I guess, and the medium asked me, asked us, do you have any questions? And I'm like, well, yeah. Um, what do you do all day now that you don't have to shave your legs? Everybody just looked at me like I was crazy, but that was something that she had to do all the time, and she was always worried about it. So I'm like, now, what do you have to do all day over there now that you don't have to shave your legs?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And will she miss shaving her legs after she's been on the other side for 1,500 Earth years?
Wouldn't miss it now.
Want to come back to shave her legs, It's like, oh
Right.
no.
I doubt she'll miss that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're joking. But we do what we want to do is the thing, because we are minds. Our soul continues, and we have choice, and we can do what we want, and we just manifest stuff because stuff is made of light, and our mind is light, and we can make stuff.
I
But
try
yeah,
to think that maybe I would not be able to put a human interpretation on what goes on over there. That seems like an oxymoron to me. I think it's a whole different experience over there that isn't even clarified by anything we do in this life, unless we want it to be.
it's different. It's different than the same. I talk about it. I
Yeah,
talk
Makes-
about that in some detail.
Yeah.
So it's more different and more the same than you realize.
yeah.
So, anything else? Questions? Anything else before we go? So,
Thank you, Kelvin.
you're welcome. And if you're curious about this 6-part series that I'm teaching, go to kelvinchin.org, go to the Afterlife 6-part series page, and there's a couple of previews there, like 20, 25 minutes long or something. And I talk about the class. And you can read some testimonials there from some of the students who've taken the class before and so forth, over the last 6 years that I've been teaching it. So you'll get a glimpse in terms of how it's different. You read how, because a lot of them have taken a lot of other spiritual workshops about afterlife and this and that, and they get into some detail about how what I teach is different. Okay.
Hey, Lorraine, can I ask you something?
Sure.
Earlier today I was looking through voice, the VOOA website
Right.
and everything, and I started looking at our kids. Is your daughter the one that got up or sang A Whole New
Yes.
World? That is
Yes.
okay. I was watching her earlier. I just wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, I mean, I was
Beautiful
just on
voice.
YouTube and it just popped up, but when I seen her, on I was like, huh?
That was
And that was
precious.
from way, way
Yeah.
back. So,
That-
so
That's
I
cool to
couldn't
have,
put
you
that
know?
like on my own page because people are, they get tired. I don't talk
Yeah.
about it a whole lot
Yes. I hear you. Yep.
that way. So in our group, that's another reason Voice of Our Angels has really helped me
Yeah.
because it's a place I could go and I could share that and not have to
Yes.
worry that
Yeah.
somebody else is going to be like, oh God, there she goes again,
Exactly.
you know,
Mhm. Yep.
because we all get it.
Yeah.
So
That's
true.
another thing, Lorraine, like you've been in my class and you know how safe a place it is. And you've shared many of your stories and so forth there with the group. And it helps other people to hear that in a safe,
Hmm.
whether they
Hmm.
hear or not, it doesn't matter. There's no pressure on people to share, but it's an open, safe place for people to share if they want to. And then they hear other people's, stories and experiences and fears and questions and whatever. And so that's this is a big part of the 6-part series too, is the Q&A, which can go on for hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Carmen's one of my lifelines as well.
Oh, and I'm so glad you have come
But I'm,
a long way.
yes,
You have come a very long way. And I think that that's part of it. It helps that we understand each other because we all have the
I
same.
just put all these little things together,
Yes.
the meditation, the classes. To me, being able to come and even do this, it's so amazing to me.
Mhm.
Um, because each time I learn something.
Yes.
So, and for anybody else in the group, I'm always here for you. Not only on Mondays, all the time.
Mhm.
Same with me.
Yeah.
Suzanne, I know too. You guys,
Tuesdays
not
and
just on
Wednesdays.
our call
ladies.
day.
Tuesdays
Yeah.
and
That.
Wednesdays. I need the calls, please. I get lonesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you don't want to call and talk, you can always message us, text
Yes.
us, or private message us, and we're there all the time, not just on our on-call days.
Absolutely.
Well, that reminds me also, I do a free initial phone consultation with anybody in the world about anything that so you just go on my website, kelvinchin.org, go to this contact page, send me an email.
That's very nice, Kelvin. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
very nice.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah,
thank
just
you so much. This is wonderful.
go to the website, surf around, you'll see a whole bunch of different stuff there. Yeah. Great to see everybody. Thank you for having me,
Oh,
Carmen.
thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night,
And
all.
have a good night, Kelvin,
Good
and
night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, Paula. See you
Good
later.
night.
night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Calvin.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming.
Have a good night.
How do I?